Hey everyone, Daniel and Chris here with the Superhero Show. We've got a huge episode now. Age of Ultron, I'm sorry if you live outside the UK and select parts of the world. Age of Ultron is now out. So in the second half of the episode, we're going to go into a big spoiler-filled discussion, but we'll sound a klaxon and make that very clear.
We're looking out for you.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, obviously don't watch that unless you don't care. But then...
I had someone unfollow me on Twitter because they couldn't see it for a week.
Oh, jealous much?
Worried that I was going to... I don't do spoilers.
You can meet you. Anyway.
Rude.
Okay, so that's later on, but first, Chris, what are we going to talk about?
Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Yeah. Because we haven't talked about that yet, have we?
No, we got an email actually from Ryan Denham who says, hi guys, it must be annoying when you record an episode of the Superhero Show right before something big is released, like the Batman v Superman trailer. You know what, Ryan? You're not wrong.
Yeah. It's happened lots.
Yeah.
Happened with lots of things, like Jesse Eisenberg being announced as Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Happened with that.
I think this is DC just mocking us. I think they're messing with us.
They know that we've obviously done a lot of shows on the Marvel movies, so they're just screwing us over.
Yep. So a week late. What are your thoughts on? What are your thoughts on the trailer?
Well, obviously our thoughts are ever relevant. I watched it while I watched the leaked version first.
Yeah.
Which I think it took so long to release the good quality version.
Yeah.
So many people's memories are of the crappy version, and even watching that, I'm like, this looks miserable.
Yeah.
Like, it looks so grim. Now, my appraisal of it has increased a little bit since then, seeing the proper version, watched it a couple of times, but it's really putting a marker in the ground for its tone. Like, your first teaser is a way of establishing, you know, kind of, I don't know, the ethos of the movie.
Yeah.
And this one is grim and weighty.
Well, I'm not sure what trailers set out to do.
Yeah.
But this one made me want to see the film less, which I don't think is the desired effect.
Yeah, I think that's the opposite.
Yeah, I guess after Man of Steel, we were a bit down on Man of Steel just because of how miserablest it was, depressing. Like it was a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
At part, and I kind of thought, well, maybe we'll get something a bit lighter this time. Yeah. But if anything, they've gone darker, and I suppose we should have known that. I mean, if it's loosely based on the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns source material, then that, of course, that is dark, but. Man, this is really dark.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, like, you could go back and look at IGN videos. Like, I was pretty positive on Man of Steel, as you were, and we were like, when we did a first spoiler cast on Man of Steel. Like, I still like that movie. I think it maybe doesn't. It's not the sort of film you rewatch, and some of that was linked to the excitement of seeing Superman on screen doing things that you've not seen him do before. Yep. That was definitely exciting, but it definitely doesn't look like the most fun movie, considering you've got these two characters that are going to go head to head. I don't know. Maybe you could have done with a bit more action, but obviously very early on with the FX work.
Yeah, lots of kind of grim voiceover. Some of the words in the trailer: fever, rage, powerlessness, cruel. You know, they've got him with a shotgun, Batman with a shotgun, maybe
invoking theology, having people like bow to him like a master slave sort of dynamic.
Do you bleed?
I do, but I don't. You won't.
It doesn't sound like something Batman would say.
It seems like cruel, like because that is Jeremy Irons speaking when he says the cruel line. I believe.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's just. It doesn't seem like a very Batman. I don't understand the dynamic they're setting up here.
No. It'll all be explained, I guess. They had 2 minutes. Ryan gave his reaction to the trailer. He said, I have to say I'm fairly disappointed. I wasn't a fan of Snyder's Man of Steel. I felt like it was all spectacle. I didn't feel like I really cared about anything that was happening. I'm thinking the same will probably happen with this movie. Well, it's harsh to judge at this stage, but I know where Ryan's coming from on that front.
Yeah. Isaac has a similar bit of feedback. Isaac's from Leeds. I was wondering, with such a dark tone shown and the fact they both look like they won't be cracking any jokes anytime soon in the newly released Batman vs Superman trailer, do you think this will damage the image of the more fun, less serious characters, or make them harder to portray when the Justice League film comes out due to the more grounded, gritty nature of the film?
Yeah, Ryan also says... Either they have the entire universe in this dark and very Frank Miller-esque tone and style, which simply won't work for characters like The Flash, Shazam and others, or this film and pretty soon its successors each end up having very different styles and tones, which would be difficult to combine for the Justice League movies. Yeah, that is interesting about the consistency of the tone of these movies.
I think it's one of the first things I thought when I watched that trailer. Suddenly, I don't know how in that world, in that movie, you're going to have a scene with Aquaman walking in without a shirt on. It just feels weird, like trying to in that world introduce this idea of this aquatic king, and then Wonder Woman on top of that.
Yeah.
And like trying to like get them in when, you know, the movie's called Batman versus Superman.
But do you not think it's a good thing that the Marvel movies are really squarely sort of fun?
Yeah.
Is this a good counterpoint that DC and Warner's are giving us something different?
I don't think that contrast could be made any stronger
No.
by the fact that the Ant-Man trailer came out the other week.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, Guardians was a comedy of sorts.
Yeah.
Ant-Man, more than anyone before, is really hamming that up.
Yeah.
And, like, well, hamming it up, stressing the fact that it is
sure.
a comedy. So I think that contrast is really good. Like, all the Marvel movies have gags. We'll get on to Ultron later. That's full of jokes. So while I don't think DC is going down the joke route at all. But I think it's wise to distinguish itself.
Yeah, but maybe it's going too far in the other direction. It's funny, I spoke to Joss Whedon this week about Age of Ultron, and I asked him if he'd ever direct a DC movie, and he said he would be up for it. Obviously, he developed Wonder Woman for a long time. Where is his quote? He said to me, "Sure," I'd be like, "Oh no, we're going to play the quote."
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Rich, can you play the clip, please?
Sure. I'd be like, I have all these joke ideas. They'd be like, no, we don't do that here. No, I desperately wanted to do a Batman film. Who doesn't? And I wanted to do Wonder Woman. I mean, you know, I was a Marvel kid growing up, but you know, I was always, you know, DC curious, and I see myself on the spectrum in between.
See, that's quite a funny response, though, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, and I think that encapsulates the difference between these two universes, where we are with them in terms of treatment, and, you know, maybe that is an intentional decision. It's like, let's not try and do what Marvel are doing, because we might get crucified if we don't get it just right. It's like, look at them trying to be like Marvel. At least they're gonna, if they succeed, they succeed on their own terms. If they fail on their own terms. Yeah.
Any more feedback?
More feedback, yeah. So this is from someone called Jack. Hi, Jack. Jack's done some maths here. He's done some counting. So he's compared what Marvel have done in the time between Man of Steel coming out and Batman versus Superman, and how, like, obviously Marvel's at a later stage in its development, but it's quite a surprise just how much Marvel's achieved. So since Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, there will have been, when it comes out, there will have been 1,014 days without DC releasing a movie. In that time, Marvel Studios will have released 5 films, Fox will have released 4 Marvel movies, and Sony will have released 1 Marvel movie. There will also have been S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Daredevil, and more, potentially, in that time. Okay. I'm wondering if the wild success that Marvel has had in DC's 1,014-day absence in Hollywood is causing DC to rush things so that they can compete with Marvel as soon as possible. Marvel spent 5 movies trying to build the Avengers, but DC is trying to build the Justice League in just 2, maybe 3 if you count Suicide Squad.
It's a good question.
It's something that's levelled at them a lot, like, are they rushing it? But it's like, they want to get into the game. And they're building with the well-known characters and, like, threading in lesser-known characters, which is what Marvel did. I don't think they're...
Well, it seemed like they've had a long time to make this movie. Yeah. It was just weird when they kept adding characters and adding titles and things. Like, it went from being a Man of Steel sequel to Batman v Superman, and then suddenly everyone else was going to be in it as well. And it just seemed a bit strange. Like, quite... I don't know, it's not how we used to seeing things done.
No, not at all.
I've got an email from Edward Lang who says, just something I thought of when watching the Batman v Superman trailer. Now we know that Batman's armoured look is clearly inspired by the armoured suit Batman wears at the end of The Dark Knight Returns when he battles Superman. I can't help but feel that the version of the suit shown in the trailer looks a little bit worn and battle damaged. As such, I was wondering, what if Batman's armoured suit was created using Kryptonian battle armour that he salvaged after the events of Man of Steel? What do you reckon?
I wonder if it's just a bit of kit he's had for ages. I'll be interested to see with Batfleck how they recount his history in that world, because he's obviously an older Bruce Wayne. Like, the brief glimpse you get of him as Bruce Wayne, he's got, like, slightly grey temples.
He has got grey.
So he's been around the block for a long, long time. So I'll be interested to see how they kind of relay the fact that he's been around and what the public's attitude towards him, because obviously the trailer is. The world, some people are scared of Superman because of the incredible power that he...
Well, he's revered as a god and feared as a god, it looks like.
And also some of the dialogue, is he an alien warrior? Is he like an emissary? Almost like a herald, almost like a Silver Surfer kind of thing? Is there going to be an invasion, kind of paranoia around him? It'd be interesting to see what the world thinks towards Batman, because obviously he wasn't really named in Man of Steel, even though there was a kind of an Easter egg. Want to see what the world thinks of Batman, whether he's just a vigilante, maybe they don't even know his name, he just clings to the shadows.
Yeah. We got an email about Batfleck, actually. Patrick McLean asks, what are your current thoughts on the depiction of the Dark Knight by Ben Affleck? Personally, I'm excited after seeing the trailer. I truly believe that Affleck is going to nail it as the older, slightly darker Batman that we've seen in The Dark Knight Returns. What do you reckon?
I haven't really got much to go on.
No.
Like, I like Ben Affleck. I think he's a good actor. I think he's a smart guy. It depends what he gets given to do.
Yep.
In the film, really. Like, I definitely feel like he looks the part. He's got a good chin, as we've said on the show many times before. Good chin.
I still prefer John Hamm's chin. The voice, though, that's his voice at the end of the trailer, that kind of deep, gravelly, robotic voice.
And that's nothing to do with the armoured suit. That's what they're actually going for. He says that all the time. It's like, how's he doing that?
I'm just done with funny Batman voices. I'm over it.
Yeah, I thought, actually, a good comparison, Daredevil. I had no idea what Daredevil's going to sound like before watching the show. Yeah. And I thought, I really hope they don't go down the Batman route. And he is shouty, but it's not actually that different.
It's a little bit. It's a bit of a growl.
It's a bit deeper, but it's not to the preposterous degree that Batman got to in the end, where you were just fixating on that.
He's a good actor, that Charlie Cox, because he's posh and English in real life.
Happiest man in the world.
Very happy, nice man.
More on that next week.
Yeah.
So, positive bit of feedback to finish on from Marius in Germany. He says, I am a huge DC fan and actually prefer everything good DC has done in movies, Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel, Watchmen, to any Marvel movie.
Wow.
As much as I enjoy Marvel's movie stuff, for me it's tad too comedic, fluffy and light. Yes, that means I enjoy Man of Steel a lot more than the Avengers, although he says he quite liked Winter Soldier and Daredevil. It will be no surprise to you that I really love everything Snyder has done with the teaser trailer for Batman vs Superman, and that to me DC is on the right track. I want them to stay dark and stay unique instead of following Marvel, and it seems they will do just that.
I agree. Well, they're doing that, it seems.
It does seem that way. That is what they are doing. So I think it comes down to what we said earlier.
Yep.
They're doing it on their own terms, and they might succeed on those terms, and they might fail.
I want it to be good. I'm willing it to be good.
It's still quite a while to go yet.
But let's end this section by predicting how many jokes do you think there will be in BVS?
We'll check in 1 year's time.
Yeah.
I think what jokes that you laugh at, so like that will make you chortle.
No, just how many
what
jokes,
they're intending, what they're trying
to.
Okay, I think there will be 4.
Okay.
What are you going for?
I'm going 3.
So it's great to hear your feedback as always. Anytime you have anything at all on Marvel, DC, or anything else comic book, superhero related, email us at
thesuperhero@ign.com and let us know how many jokes you think there'll be in Batman vs Superman.
We can tear them apart from the inside. That's the best you can do! You had to ask.
Hey everyone, it's time to talk the Avengers Age of Ultron in gory graphic detail. So this is a spoiler cast. We're going to talk about all aspects of the movie. So if you haven't watched it or you really care about it, don't watch this without seeing the movie.
Yep.
If you don't care about spoilers, watch it. Yeah. So we're going to talk about whether we think it's better than the first movie, but also use that as kind of jumping off point to discuss lots about the movie, what works, what maybe doesn't work, what we think of the villains, what we think of the heroes, and so on. But first off, should we just talk about whether we liked it or not?
Yeah, let's do that. Did you like it?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like there's a lot riding on it, and the fact I feel like the crossover movie, which that is harder for it to be a really interesting movie because there's less, it's so much to like deal with and tackle, and the fact that it even holds together and makes sense, I think, is a minor miracle. Because there's so many modern blockbusters, they're just shambles.
Yeah.
Like the Transformer movies, they're just shambles. Like there's so many characters, the plot is a shambles. Like the villain is a shambles, the heroes don't work. The fact that this works, it's entertaining, the action is breathtaking in places.
Yeah.
There's lots of character moments, there's humour, and it makes sense without, even though it has to set up other stuff. I think that's quite a feat. Is it my favourite Marvel movie? No, but I think it's a really good movie.
Respect is due to Joss Whedon, isn't it, for pulling all this together. 11 characters, giving everyone their moment. Some better than others, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, it's an incredible achievement to do it not once but twice and not drop the ball either time.
Yeah, and what I really like about it is like, in the last few months, this like second, third, whatever wave of superhero films that we've had recently, we've talked about them as like aping or assimilating different movie genres. Winter Soldier is a bit like a 70s political theory and yet thriller, and yes, it is a little bit, but it's still a comic book movie. I feel like Age of Ultron just go, screw that. What genre we're going to do? We're going to do comic book.
Yeah.
And it loves being a comic book movie. It's got all these characters to deal with. It's got a villain. It's got a silly plot. It's really economical with its dialogue. Like, it has to convey characterization in one line.
Yeah.
And it nails that. And it's like, we've got to move on. It's almost like you're turning pages.
Yeah, sure.
And the action's really flowing. I just feel like it's very happy to be a comic book movie.
I think my favourite sequence was actually the opening sequence, that action scene.
So good.
Watching them work together was just brilliantly choreographed.
And that's what's really good about the choreography. It's almost like that carries some of the characterization.
Yeah.
It's like shorthand. It's like you can tell that they've been on lots of missions together.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're not fighting individually. They're fighting as a team. So whether that's, using Cap's shield or Hawkeye's arrows, there's real teamwork.
Yeah.
To be seen.
Using the Hulk as a weapon.
Yeah. Like he's like the bomb of the group, and I like when he's like back at base. Like, you don't need him for every mission, just in case. He's like, is it code green?
Yeah.
Am I needed when they're in Wakanda?
It's because he's vaguely in control of his powers at the start of the film. And of course, that ebbs away. So what other stuff did you like in it then?
I liked the villain. I think Ultron was great. I liked a lot the staging of the stuff. Like, it was there's no scene that goes on too long. There's not like a Basil exposition scene. It's all done on the move.
Yeah.
And it doesn't done really well. It doesn't drag in any places.
I guess there's a couple of scenes that are quite lengthy. That kind of the scene at the party scene, and then the scene at Hawkeye's.
The ranch. So I really like the party.
I've seen them twice. I've seen it twice now, and I actually liked those scenes a lot the second time.
Yeah.
Where you had really good character moments. They felt like real Joss Whedon scenes.
I think those are like too much. You don't have those scenes, you don't care about the movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think the Hawkeye thing is a particular revelation. I think a lot of people will talk about that because... And it's something the movie almost gestures towards as well, because, he had a plot function in the first Avengers movie. He was brainwashed, and there's a moment where he might be brainwashed in this movie by Scarlet Witch. It's like, nah, I've done that, not a big fan. And it's almost like a wink to camera moment. It's
definitely.
like, I'm not a big fan of that. And then in this movie, he gets the most character stuff. And suddenly, you care about that character in a way that you never did before, because you realise, halfway through the movie, that he has a family and kids that he goes home to in between missions. And he is like, him and Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow, they're the most human. They're not superpowered. They're both spies, but he bleeds. He gets injured on the first mission, which again introduces another plot point. So it's really economical with what it uses. Like, it has him being injured, but that's to set up how they build the vision. So it's, again, very elegant storytelling, I think.
And let's talk about the new characters then. So you mentioned Ultron.
Yeah.
James Spader did a great job, I think. I mean, I think it's a better film whenever he's on screen. It's more interesting. You kind of sit forward and you're just not sure what he's going to say next. He wasn't really what I was expecting.
Not at all.
He was more wisecracking than I was expecting.
Not what I was expecting at all. Like, from the trailers, he's just like purely menacing and quite like a bit bland, like a lot in the voice, but in the movie, quite comical. And it's almost like, it's based on Robert Downey Jr.
It is, exactly. It's very much Tony Stark, isn't it?
Yeah.
That I wasn't expecting that.
And that's like a plot point, because there's a scene where I think he says it to Ulysses Claw. He says a line. He says, make your enemies rich, make your friends rich, and then decide which is which. And Claw says to him, I think, he says, Tony Stark says that. He's like, I'm nothing like Tony Stark.
That's what leads to Ulysses Claw losing his arm.
Yeah. I've heard about that Easter egg as a kind of digression. So, somebody asked Kevin Feige, would there ever be like a Star Wars Marvel crossover? And he said, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And if you didn't notice, there's an Easter egg in all of the Phase 2 movies. Someone loses an arm just like Luke in every movie.
Really?
I'm not sure that happened.
That's insane.
That's really elaborate.
Yeah.
Like Groot losing an arm, it's a thing. In all the Phase 2 movies, someone loses an arm.
We should do a sizzle reel of all the arm, all the arm
Anyway.
loss. Okay, the Vision. What did you think of Vision?
I thought it was probably my favourite scene of the movie. Like, I really like the two go hand in hand, but the party scene with the hammer.
Yep.
And how that culminates, because the Vision's quite a terrifying creation, especially in light of what's happened with Ultron. You know, nobody trusts Tony Stark at that moment. Who's this weird creature? He's spouting, you know, all these kind of possible platitudes, and then he holds the hammer. And the audience that we were with just like gasped and then laughed, because in that moment you knew that this guy could be trusted.
Yeah, that's an example of a great setup and payoff. Actually,
yeah,
that
so
joke.
Good.
And it works narratively, and it's very funny.
And it tells you everything you need to know about that character. He is worthy.
And I thought he looked good as well. Like I like the way they didn't go the CG route, so that they kind of reinforced the fact that he is, you know, in a human body as such.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like a synthetic, but he's supposed to be like the whole idea about him. He's like, even though he's not human, he's the most human.
Yeah,
and I love the fact that obviously it wouldn't have always been planned. It might have been planned like 5 years ago. Somebody had the idea, but the fact that they've been able to use Paul Bettany, it's really elegant. It's one of those things we really worked out. The guy they picked to do the voice back in the day, is also a decent actor. And could pull that off, you know, like physically.
They're smart, these Marvel
Sometimes
people.
It looks out, and sometimes it's intentional, and I think it's probably a bit of both with that one.
Yeah.
But, you know, he is a really important Avenger in the history of the Avengers.
Yeah. And
suddenly got a big new player in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
All right, let's talk Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Yeah. What are your feelings about them two?
I'm still not 100% sure about the accents. A little bit.
I've written down Scarlet's in my like bad section of things I didn't like. Scarlet Witch's accent was all over the place.
Yeah, Quicksilver's not so bad, but I don't know. It's just really prominent because they don't speak that much in the movie.
No.
So when they do, I think you're probably scrutinising it a lot.
Right.
He goes, you didn't see that kill me. And it's like, because I come from an Eastern European background, it's just like, I've heard that accent done quite a lot.
Yeah. He watched a lot of Borat before
Yeah, I think they're good, like, you know, comparisons going to be made between that Quicksilver and this Quicksilver we got last year in Days of Future Past. And it's an unfair comparison because that guy got such an amazing set piece, whereas this Quicksilver is very much just in scenes. He's a supporting player.
Yeah, I mean, it was a more serious take on it. It was like a tragic Quicksilver, whereas the Days of Future Past was a fun.
Yeah.
It was all about the joy of having that power, whereas this one, it was a little more serious, their take on it.
Yeah, and I think I prefer the Days of Future Past. I think they conveyed, even though Aaron Taylor-Johnson has said this about this Quicksilver, I think it got way more the idea of the Quicksilver being much more fidgety and impatient with people and just like having no time for the people. Whereas this, they have a very sad origin story, which again, really smart to tie it back into Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And this idea of them being under their bed in their village that had been bombed, and they spent 2-3 days staring at a shell that had the word Stark on it. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I my problem was I don't think we got to spend enough time with them, and enough time with them kind of on their own interacting with each other. I never really felt like they were really brother and sister.
Yeah.
And so as a byproduct of that, when he was killed, it didn't really have much meaning. I didn't know who this guy was, so
I think you're right there. Yeah.
I didn't really feel anything, and I guess it's supposed to be a big moment in the movie, and you know, I'm sure there'll be sort of repercussions going forward because of his death, but it didn't work for me.
Totally. I think like in a movie you can form an attachment to a character who then dies, but if that character is like one of 3 or 4, because he's one of so many, and you have stronger attachments to pretty much all the other characters in the movie before him and her. When he does die, it's noble, but you've just got to the point of you're starting to bond with him. Yeah, it does.
They spent the whole film setting up Hawkeye to be killed.
Yeah. And
then to throw us off the scent, and then at the last minute do the switcheroo. And it just would have resonated a lot more, I think, if it had been Hawkeye.
If
they'd had the balls to do that.
But then, do you think... It's interesting, because the Avengers franchise, like, we've had deaths in other... But it feels like it'd be maybe a bit similar to the first Avengers, where you have that death of a major team character as, like, again, the glue to bring them together.
Yeah. Who wasn't really dead.
Nobody dies. Quicksilver might not even be there.
What do you think? There seems to be a fair amount of kind of seed planting for movies going forward.
Yeah.
Did you find that a bit of an annoyance at all?
Yeah, I guess like thinking back to the first Avengers, like the main thing it did was introduce, I don't know, space.
Yeah.
This kind of cosmic threat, which obviously is built. It helped us go to the Guardians of the Galaxy part of the universe, and it will eventually culminate in Infinity War. This one, I felt like it had very specific beats to get in. Like the Wakanda thing is a digression. It does link back sensibly to the plot because vibranium, does exist there. So it's not like completely crowbarred in. But I think like the appearance of Andy Serkis, like. It just had to get it done and ticked, I think. I was a bit disappointed we didn't, the fact that we made that entire digression, there wasn't more of a, an Easter egg for Black Panther beyond the claw.
Yeah.
Like something on a television screen or something more, unless I missed it.
I agree, and I wasn't best pleased about the action scene in South Korea as well, because it feels like a lot of these blockbusters are feeling the need to film scenes in China or Korea because these markets are growing so fast. Audiences will maybe be more keen to see a movie if some of it's set in their country or nearby. And that scene was pointless, really. I mean, it was an interesting action scene, but there was no real reason for it to be moved to Korea. It was quite ugly looking, going through the streets of Seoul. Like, it wasn't...
It was weird, and the setup for that is really weird when after the first mission, they go back to the Avengers Tower, and suddenly his entire medical team is South Korean.
Yeah.
And that's why, it's his personal doctor, and it's like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I knew it was going to South Korea, but right, that's why we go there.
It's kind of pandering a little bit.
There's quite a bit of product placement as well.
Was there?
Yeah.
Any particular?
Particularly Samsung, again, South Korean brand. So
right.
I guess there was maybe a bigger deal there. But it was quite funny, I thought, the product placement, because obviously Tony Stark has the most amazing technology in the world. So you don't see it then. It's only when everything gets trashed, they're like, I'm going to have to use Samsung stuff. So it's almost like a backhanded product placement. It's like, all our good stuff's ruined. Get a Samsung tablet.
Yeah. It was interesting finding out how they were dealing with the fact that Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver were mutants. They're called enhanced now. They're enhanced human beings, aren't they?
We have enhanced in the field, he says.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of talk about them, being presented as Inhumans. Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's how they're going to tackle that problem going forward, though.
Yeah.
We now know, which was... I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and it ultimately doesn't really affect it. Still the same powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's bigger politics at play there that exist behind the films, I guess.
Yeah.
But I like Quicksilver and I like Scarlet Witch. I like the scene at the end. One of my favourite moments. Hawkeye had a lot of great moments, but the kind of pep talk he gives her in the building...
Yeah.
Really funny, really nails it. It's like, I'm a guy with a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense. If you go out there, you're an Avenger. And when she comes out, she destroys everything. Her powers are really formidable.
Yeah.
And you get a sense of that. She's maybe a little bit weak because of her history, but when she loses it, it's scary.
Yeah.
I actually thought they were going to go more scary in places because when she's introduced, they do the kind of J-horror trick of having her move forward and then they reverse it. And it's kind of this creepy, stilted, staccato movement. But that doesn't really continue.
No, it felt like there was potential to do more with her character.
Yeah,
I guess she'll play a bigger part going forward.
Actually, we should talk about the finale because they build a new research facility, a new base, and very pointedly, it's called the New Avengers.
Yep.
Facility, and at the end, he says Avengers, and you've got your new look team.
Yeah,
I think this is going to be a big talking point when the movie's out, and people are less scared about spoilers. That's is that the new Avengers team? That everyone's gone off and done their own stuff, and we've talked about that so much on the show about how these characters need to be interchangeable in that team because of basically they need to do their own movies, but also in real world stuff. These actors aren't going to commit forever.
No.
So at the end, you've got it's Scarlet. So it's Black Widow, it's Captain America, Falcon, War Machine, Vision, and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
And that's the shot of them is a hero shot of them.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It made me feel a bit weird. It made me feel a bit of a funny feeling in the pit of my stomach that I'm going to have to say goodbye to these other characters soon.
Yeah. And
do I like these characters as much? I'm not sure.
Also, I was thinking about Civil War as well. Does that mean essentially Civil War? Surely Captain America, if he's facing some troubles, isn't going to ignore these people that could help him. They're on his team.
Yeah. Well, is this Captain America's side of Civil War though?
Yeah.
And everyone else is on Iron Man's side. That's not here and from other movies and things.
We talked about this just today. It's like they end on pretty decent terms.
Yeah.
Like Tony Stark, like potentially destroyed the world again through using his intellect, and also Banner. I thought Banner got off lightly. Like he was as much responsible as Tony Stark.
Yeah, he was a yes man, wasn't he?
He was a yes man. Yeah, he was pushing around the Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Banner didn't, probably just scared of him. But anyway, like at the end, they end on pretty good terms. They handshake. They have like a nice little exchange. There's no real animosity there. I thought it was going to end with them really like at each other's throats and like storming off in different directions. But there's none of that really. It ends on a really positive note.
And talking on being on good terms, what did you think about the burgeoning romance between Hulk and Scarlet?
It came out of nowhere, didn't it?
Scarlett Johansson and Mark Ruffalo.
I keep calling her Scarlett Johansson instead of Black Widow. It just came a bit out of nowhere, wasn't it?
Totally.
It was hinted at in the trailer, I guess, with the hand, and we thought maybe there'd be something there.
Yeah.
Do you think it worked?
No.
No.
Didn't buy it. You know what it reminded me of is Friends when Joey and Rachel got together. And And it made no sense. Like there'd been no inkling, and I just didn't, and that annoyed me to the point that I think I stopped watching Friends. And I felt that way in this film. Like you're just doing this for the sake of it. I didn't feel like they earned it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think Jim talks about that in his review on the site as well.
Yeah, because I don't think maybe if you'd planted some kind of seed in the first movie, maybe you need to rewatch that. Is there something?
Yeah. I think there is a spark there, but equally it's much more pronounced with her and Hawkeye in the first film, and her and Captain America in Winter Soldier. So it's like she's getting about a bit. I know that's part of her personality.
Yeah.
But equally,
she's gonna turn up in Daredevil.
But equally, I found the scenes didn't really work for me either. Like,
no, it does give I kind of guess the one a really good line where she pushes him over into the gap, and she goes, "I need the other guy." It's quite a good line, but it's not worth wasting your movie for that line.
No, and it kind of slowed proceedings down a couple of times.
Yeah.
I felt like when they were having their moments together. Do you have a favourite moment in the film?
I think it is the hammer moment. It's such a good payoff, like that and the party scene.
Yeah.
When we're talking about things that don't work, all the Thor stuff didn't work for me at all. I had no idea. Like I was paying attention more than most people, and it was a bit shaky what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like going off to Greenwich to Royal Holloway to meet Skarsgård, and then kind of just hurry, like suddenly they're in these caves.
Yeah.
And I can buy into the fact that this is kind of ancient technology, but you did it in such a quick way. He's stripped off and he's in the bath.
And it's kind of setting up Ragnarok, isn't it?
That's all that's doing.
Yeah, and I quite agree. I didn't really know what was happening there. Even the second time, I was a bit like, ugh.
Yeah, because I'm going to see it next week again, and I want to like pay attention. Like, surely he said more, but I don't think there is. It's like go along with it, and I'm happy to go along with. I'd rather that than loads of exposition. But I don't feel like I even got a little bit to know what was going on, because he's having these nightmares, and then at the end he does one.
Yeah,
and then Idris Elba is just grabbing his head.
Yeah, blind Idris Elba
with his little scary eyes.
Yeah, what was going on?
And that's like everyone just reveling, getting a bit erotic.
All right, well, you started on the negative, so what else didn't you like then?
It's not much else. Like a lot of it's just the roller coaster ride. I think it's just a fun ride. You know, there's not too much flab on it. We obviously talked about the digression to Wakanda. I thought they could have done more with Scarlet Witch getting into their heads. I thought they could have taken them to some darker places. There's that sequence where she gets into 3 of their heads: Widow, Captain America, and
Tony Stark. Yeah.
And I thought they could have done some cool stuff. Like I thought they could have had Red Skull appear.
Yeah, the Cap one was pretty uninteresting.
Yeah, like it was just him seeing Carter. I thought there was going to be something really scary. It would have been nice if they were almost like nightmarish interludes and really played up the horror element maybe of Scarlet Witch, because I thought that'd be really cool to see like Red Skull again or something like that. What about you?
You know, there was one guy I didn't like from the start of the film. We haven't spoken about that.
No, yeah. So when we went before we went into the movie, what did you ask me?
Oh, I said to you, this isn't spoiling anything, but just look out for the guy at the start in Stryker's Castle who says the Avengers twice, because it's a bit weird, his delivery.
It's like it's the Avengers.
It's the Avengers.
What's it? Oh, we need to fight them. It's the Avengers.
Yeah, it was just weird. Like
it is weird. I don't know if I would have picked up on it because I thought like he's obviously trying to play it as like he's quite lame.
Yeah.
Like he's scared.
Yeah.
It is a bit weird that it's twice. It just like echoes in your ear.
Just took me out of the movie a little
Avengers.
bit.
Striker's hardly in it.
No, yeah. Sorry, I called him Strucker. Yeah, that's disappointing because he's such a good actor, that guy. And he's quite funny in the role.
And again, it's with a lot of these things. I think it's it's purely time. To a degree. Like it would have been good to find out a bit more of experiments.
Yep.
And I think because it just goes with it again, whereas maybe other films that have less going on would like dilate some of these moments, like the kind of the Infinity Stone used with the Vision and his creation could maybe have been elaborated a little bit more.
Yeah, I could have done with more explaining there.
Because suddenly it's just there, and I'm like, is that from Loki's staff, or have they somehow found another one?
The birth of the Vision is so complicated and convoluted in the movie, and yet I still don't really think I got it.
Yeah, because
I got it more the second time.
The stone is from inside Loki's scepter, isn't it?
I believe, it's that one.
It's just confusing because it's... I'm going to sound really simple because it's a different colour. But obviously the Tesseract's the blue stone. But suddenly it just appears and it's like, pop that in. Oh, there you go. He's off.
So some things could have been explained better. Equally, other things I don't think I needed to have explained to me. So I find it quite painful when they've got to explain why Pepper and Jane aren't in the film.
Oh yeah,
and it's really shoehorned in, isn't it? And Maria Hill has that awful
just don't have
thing where she says testosterone, and just I'd rather just I can figure it out for myself. You guys are busy. Your girls are off doing something.
Gwyneth Paltrow is busy making vegan cupcakes.
Exactly, and getting
divorced. She hasn't got time to be doing stuff like this.
So yeah, that line I found a bit painful. The mind the language joke. I didn't find it funny the first time, and then for them to keep repeating it, got on my nerves a little bit.
Yeah, because I thought it was late to bed, but it's in the middle, and it's at the end.
Yeah, that's when a setup and payoff doesn't work.
Nick Fury, what if you like? I feel like he's just limited again. It's like that. It's lazy pep talk. I don't think he.
Yeah, and it bring. I don't know if he needed to be there, and it raises more questions than it answers because obviously, Agent Coulson is now dead in the movies, but he's been brought back to life on the telly, and all these people interact with each other. So it's yeah.
Hawkeye had a nice house there.
Yeah.
So positive.
And he's married to the girl from Freaks and Geeks.
And ER.
Yeah, that's cool. What do you think of the mid-credits sting?
So it's interesting. Like I went back and after it, I kind of went back and looked at all the other stings because I feel like sometimes I remember them as being better than they were. It's fine. Like I quite like seeing him put on the gauntlet. I think for fanboys that's kind of a little bit of a goosebump moment, and it's like right, it's coming,
Yeah.
But I guess we should talk about Thanos obviously putting on the Infinity Gauntlet. It's basically saying, God, I've got to do it myself.
Yeah. But it just felt like almost a repeat of one before. Like I almost felt like I'd seen that sting before, even though I hadn't. Just it's him.
Yeah, because I thought he might have turned up at some scene during the movie. I think maybe you and I could do without it. People watching the show could do without it. But I almost feel like you've got this large captive audience, and you go, this guy again. This guy's important. You've seen him a few times. Remember a big purple face man? Do you remember him?
At least we know he can get out of that chair.
Yeah, yeah, just hovering around the whole film. So I think maybe he's partly that. And we should say at the time of recording, if there is a second sting, we haven't seen it.
No.
On the preview screenings that we went to,
we've not seen it in any official capacity.
If that thing that we may have seen is real,
that's awkward, isn't it? Any other negatives though? I wasn't a huge fan of the music either, the Danny Elfman score. Like, it just feels like it... Towards the end, I'd like the music a little better, but it just felt like it really needed a good superhero theme.
I don't remember any of it.
No.
Like, I know I can barely hum any music, so I can barely remember the Avengers theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not very memorable at all, but you could level that at a lot of these modern superhero movies, I think.
Yeah.
Bring
back the superhero theme. All right, well, shall we talk about the first movie?
Yeah.
Do you think this is better or worse than Avengers?
It's hard with the Avengers because when you first saw it, it's the first time you had one of these crossovers where it happens with greater frequency now, even outside the Avengers. You get these characters popping up in the other movies.
Yep.
So part of the Avengers was the fact that it just worked, the novelty of seeing it all, like seeing the Hulk punch down a massive space worm in Manhattan was cool. I think this is probably a fuller, more rounded, fun movie than the Avengers. I think you go back and you kind of dissociate the novelty of first seeing the Avengers, and it's good, but I don't think it's at the upper tier of Marvel stuff, and I think probably this eclipses it. But again, I don't think this is at the top of Marvel's stuff yet.
Yep. I think it's a better film. I don't necessarily think it's a better kind of cinema going experience. It lacks that wow factor that the first film had. But the first film was very strangely structured. There's lots of things I don't like about it, but it's that excitement level of seeing it all together, come together for the first time. Whereas this one, that novelty's worn off. But they've made a better movie. You know, I think the villain is more interesting and better. I like Loki, but he's more a fun villain, isn't he? He's almost like a goodie to me.
Yeah.
Whereas this villain felt like a real interesting threat. Although I never quite understood what his powers were exactly, and
he was nowhere and everywhere.
Yeah, and
which I quite like, because you couldn't destroy him.
Yeah, but then
he destroyed himself. I quite like that scene where he ripped through his old body.
Yeah, that was very good.
Great.
That was very good. Equally, there's a lot more Hulk in this film, and Hulk's my favourite, so for that reason, I like it more. It's a basic reason.
I really like that explanation. Hulk is my favourite, and he's in it more.
But yeah, so overall, I'm saying I think it's a better movie.
Great. So we want to hear what you think. Do you think Age of Ultron is better than the first Avengers? You can email us at superheroeshow@ign.com. And until next week, for everything on Marvel, DC, and all the rest, stay right here on IGN.